Dr. Kim Gina walked slowly through the empty halls of the old museum. Her footsteps echoed on the cold metal floors that the Vexery had installed 50 years ago. The alien conquerors had taken everything that was human from this place and replaced it with their own cold silver decorations. She carried her repair tools in a worn bag, just like every other day for the past 20 years. To the tall, scaled Vexery who watched her work, she was nothing more than a useful servant. They barely looked at her anymore. Humans had become like furniture to them. Always there, always working, never really seen. Unit 749, her Vexery supervisor called out in their harsh language. He never used her real name. The heating system in the East Wing needs fixing again. Gina bowed her head like she had been taught. Yes, Controller Vexton. I will repair it immediately. The alien made a dismissive sound and returned to his glowing data screen. Gina had learned long ago that showing any emotion was dangerous. The Vexery respected only complete obedience from the humans they ruled. She walked toward the broken heater, but her mind was not on repairs. Today marked exactly 51 years since the Vexery ships had appeared in Earth's skies. She had been just 5 years old when her world ended. She remembered hiding in her mother's arms as the alien voices announced humanity's surrender over every radio and television. The museum had been one of the first buildings they changed. All the displays about human history, human art, human achievements, everything had been removed and destroyed. In their place, the Vexery had built monuments to their own greatness. They wanted humans to forget they had ever been anything more than servants. But the Vexery had made one important mistake. They thought breaking human spirits was the same as breaking human memory. Gina reached the heating unit and began her work. Her hands moved automatically while her thoughts drifted to her real purpose. Few people knew that she had not been born in the human housing blocks where most of her kind lived. She had been born right here, in the hidden spaces below this very building. When the workday ended and the Vexery returned to their towers above the city, Gina waited. She cleaned her tools slowly, making sure she was the last human in the building. Then she moved to a maintenance panel that looked exactly like dozens of others throughout the museum, but this one was different. When she pressed her hand against it in the right pattern, it opened to reveal a narrow stairway leading down into darkness. The hidden chambers below the museum were warm and filled with quiet activity. Dozens of humans worked by soft lighting, their faces focused on tasks the aliens above could never imagine. Some sat at tables covered with old books, carefully copying the words onto new pages. Others worked at computer terminals, preserving digital records of everything their conquerors had tried to erase. "How is today, Gina?" asked Lee Sora, an elderly woman who had been monitoring alien communications for 30 years. Her hair was completely gray now, but her eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept her going through 5 decades of hiding. "The same as always," Gina replied, settling into her chair at a workstation. "They see us, but they do not really see us. We are invisible to them now," Sora smiled. "That invisibility is our greatest weapon. They stopped watching us carefully years ago. They think we have accepted our place." Gina began her evening work, translating intercepted Vexery military communications. Like many humans of her generation, she had learned the alien language perfectly. The Vexery encouraged this, thinking it made humans more useful servants. They never realized it also made humans perfect spies. Tonight's messages seemed routine at first. Supply reports, personnel transfers, maintenance schedules. But then Gina found something that made her heart race. "Sora," she called softly. "You need to see this." The older woman hurried over as Gina pointed to her screen. "It's from the Vexery Archaeological Division. They found something on a planet called Kepler 4b. They're trying to keep it secret. But look at these code words." Sora read the message twice, her eyes growing wide. "Human artifacts," she whispered. "But that's impossible. The Vexery told us they destroyed all the colony ships before they could escape Earth's solar system." "Maybe they lied," Gina said. "Or maybe they missed one." Around them, other workers had stopped their tasks to listen. The possibility that humans might have survived somewhere else in the galaxy was something they had hoped for but never dared to believe. "We need to contact the other cells," Sora said, her voice shaking with excitement. "If there are humans Out there, they need to know we're still here, still fighting. Gina nodded and began composing a coded message. Across the world, in hidden chambers like this one, other groups of humans maintained the same secret vigil. They preserved knowledge, gathered intelligence, and waited for the day when their patience would finally be rewarded. For 50 years, Vexery had believed they had conquered humanity completely. But in the darkness below their feet, the true human spirit lived on. Tonight, that spirit had new hope. The long wait might finally be ending. The message traveled through the hidden network like fire spreading through dry grass. From the underground chambers beneath the old museum, dotted signals moved through secret radio frequencies to resistance cells across the planet. Each group had waited 50 years for news like this. In the Vexery Central Command building, Kong Woojin worked his night shift as usual. The aliens trusted him to maintain their communication systems because he had served them faithfully for 15 years. They never suspected that his real job was listening to their most secret transmissions tonight. His hands shook as he read the decoded message from the underground. New Geneva lives. 7 colonies confirmed. They have been watching. Looked around the empty control room. The Vexery night staff was sleeping, confident that their human servants would keep everything running smoothly. He quickly copied the alien archaeological reports onto a hidden data chip, his heart pounding with each file he transferred. The colony ship Aspiration had not been destroyed as the Vexery claimed. It had reached the Tau Ceti system and built a thriving settlement for 50 years. These free humans had been developing new technology and preparing for the day they could return to help Earth. This changes everything, he whispered to his partner, Choi Hannah, when she arrived for the morning shift. They spoke in careful code, knowing the aliens monitored all conversations. The old garden project is finally bearing fruit, he said, passing her the data chip hidden inside a repair manual. Hannah's eyes widened as she understood. The garden project was their code name for the dream that somewhere in the galaxy, free humans still existed. That dream was real. Across the Pacific Ocean, in what had once been Australia, Yoon Jae-in received the same news in his hidden workshop. For 50 years, he had posed as a simple farming technician while secretly leading the Southern Hemisphere Resistance Network. The underground chamber beneath his equipment shed was filled with carefully maintained weapons and communication gear. Gather the cell leaders, he told his assistant, Song Minji. It's time for them to know. Within hours, representatives from across the region had arrived. They came disguised as agricultural workers, maintenance staff, and supply drivers. To any watching Vexery, it looked like a routine equipment inspection. But in the hidden chamber, below, these people represented millions of humans who had never stopped hoping. Our brothers and sisters survived, Jaeon announced, displaying the transmitted data on a hidden screen. 7 colonies. Maybe more. They have ships, weapons, and technology we never imagined possible. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were not alone. Somewhere in the depths of space, free humans had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. What about us? Asked Kim Do-yeon, who led the resistance cell in what used to be Japan. Are we ready? Minji smiled and activated another display. It showed a map of the Pacific region marked with thousands of small red dots. Every dot represents one of our people in a critical position: power plants, communication centers, transportation hubs, military installations. Now we have eyes and hands everywhere. The Vexery had made their greatest mistake by depending on human labor. Over the decades, they had trained humans to maintain their technology, operate their systems, and manage their infrastructure. The aliens thought this made humans useful. They never realized it made humans dangerous. We know their security codes because we input them every day, reported Lee Yuna from the transportation sector. We know their patrol schedules because we file the reports. We know their weaknesses because we fix their equipment when it breaks. Jae-yoon nodded. And our children have been learning too, not just how to serve, but how to fight. In hidden schools across the world, young humans learned more than the basic skills the Vexery allowed. Disguised as games and stories, children practiced combat techniques, memorized strategic information, and developed the skills they would need when the time came. Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, the message reached even the most isolated resistance cells. Nkungmin worked on the Vexery space station as a maintenance engineer. To her alien supervisors, she was just another useful human worker. They never suspected that her routine repairs were actually sabotage preparations that had taken years to complete. The sleeping giant is waking up. She transmitted to her contacts on the surface, using a code based on old Earth poetry that the aliens could never understand. All across the solar system, similar preparations had been underway for decades. Humans working in asteroid mines had been stockpiling rare metals. Those on the lunar facilities had been modifying equipment and mapping vulnerabilities. Even on the distant research stations, human workers had been gathering intelligence and preparing for a day that many thought would never come. The revelation about the surviving colonies changed everything. The resistance networks that had operated in isolation now realized they were part of something much larger. Every small act of defiance, every preserved piece of human culture, every secretly trained child had been preparing for a coordinated response that would span multiple star systems. As the news spread, something else spread with it: hope. For the first time in 50 years, humans began to believe that their long patience might finally be rewarded. The aliens had thought they were ruling a broken people. Instead, they had been living on top of a careful plan that had been growing stronger every day. The awakening had begun. Soon, the Vexery would learn what 50 years of human planning could accomplish. The uprising began at exactly 3 a.m, Earth time, across 6 continents and 12 space stations. Humans who had spent 50 years pretending to be loyal servants suddenly revealed what they really were: the most patient and thorough. Resistance network in galactic history, Dr. Kim Jina stood in a room that the Vexery had never suspected existed. Hidden 5 levels beneath the museum, the real human command center hummed with activity. Dozens of screens showed feeds from around the world as the plan they had spent decades preparing finally began. Phoenix Grid is online, reported Park Sun-ho from his position inside the Vexery High Command. For 20 years, he had worked as a janitor in their most secure building. The aliens had barely noticed him as he slowly installed hidden equipment throughout their headquarters. What looked like a simple cleaning closet was actually the terminal for a massive computer network built from stolen components. Stormfront. Ready? Announced Nkungmin from the orbital platform above Earth. The routine maintenance she had been doing for years was actually the placement of explosive charges throughout the Vexery fleet. She had been so careful, so patient. The aliens had even promoted her for her excellent work. All around the planet, similar reports came in. Every human who had learned to speak the alien language was actually a translator who could intercept their communications. Every human who maintained alien equipment knew exactly how to disable it. Every human who cooked alien food or cleaned alien homes has been mapping their targets for decades. The Vexery had made the same mistake that many conquerors throughout history had made. They had become completely dependent on the people they thought they had defeated in the depths of space. Admiral Jungyuki watched her fleet emerge from hiding. For 50 years, humans had been secretly building ships in asteroid belts and hidden nebulae. They had used salvaged Vexery technology combined with human creativity to create vessels that their former masters had never imagined possible. All units, this is Liberation Command. Her voice echoed across frequencies the Vexery had never known humans could access. Today we go home. The hidden fleet was not the only surprise. From the distant colonies came support that made even veteran resistance fighters gasp in amazement. New Geneva had become a center for cyber warfare, their computer experts turning the aliens' own networks against them. New Kilimanjaro had built massive weapons platforms that could strike targets across multiple star systems. New Babylon had developed biological agents that could disable Vexery equipment without harming other life forms. But the greatest shock for the Vexery was learning how completely they had been studied. Every alien who had worked with humans, every conversation overheard, every cultural detail observed, it had all been carefully recorded and analyzed. Humans knew Vexery psychology better than the Vexery knew themselves. Commander Rexstar of the Vexery 3rd Fleet stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red warning lights covered the screen as human forces appeared seemingly from nowhere. Ships that his scanners had dismissed as space debris suddenly activated powerful weapons. Stations that should have been under his control were reporting system failures across all their networks. How is this possible? He demanded of his intelligence officer. We have ruled them for 50 years, the intelligence officer's response sent chills through the bridge crew. Sir, I do not think we were ruling them at all. I think they were studying us. On Earth, the ground campaign revealed the true scope of human preparation. In every major city, Vexery forces found themselves surrounded by enemies who knew the terrain perfectly. Humans emerged from hidden bunkers. With weapons designed specifically to counter alien technology, transportation systems that the aliens had depended on suddenly stopped working. Communication networks that had operated flawlessly for decades began transmitting human messages. Instead of alien orders, resistance leader Yoon Jae-yoon led his forces through the streets of what had once been Sydney. Every building, every alley, every underground tunnel was mapped in perfect detail. His people had lived under alien rule long enough to know exactly where every weakness lay. East sector secured, reported his lieutenant Bae Ji-won. The Vexery garrisons surrendered when they realized their computer systems had been compromised for years. But perhaps the most devastating blow to Vexery confidence came from their own territory. Across 17 different worlds, human populations that the aliens thought they had successfully integrated suddenly revealed coordinated resistance. Worlds that provided crucial resources for the Empire found their production mysteriously failing. Colonies that had seemed peaceful for decades suddenly displayed perfect organization and preparation. The Vexery faced a nightmare that their military doctrine had never considered. Their own infrastructure, operated by the species they had conquered, was turning against them with 50 years of accumulated knowledge and careful planning. What terrified the alien leadership most was the realization that this was not a spontaneous rebellion. Every action showed careful coordination. Every strike hit exactly the right target. Every human seemed to know exactly what their role was in a plan that spanned multiple star systems and involved millions of people. General Vex Morin, Supreme Commander of all Vexery forces, stood in his flagship's command center, surrounded by reports of failure. Every red indicator on his screens represented another human victory, another carefully planned operation succeeding exactly as designed. They were never broken, he said quietly to his staff. We thought we were teaching them to serve us. Instead, they were learning how to defeat us. The network was revealed, and it was vast beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Vexery response came exactly as the humans had predicted it would. For 50 years, they had studied their conquerors' military tactics, their psychology, and their strategic thinking. When the alien fleets moved to crush the rebellion, they found their enemies already waiting 3 steps ahead. Captain Odesun watched from the bridge of his stealth ship, Remembrance, as the massive Vexery Third Fleet approached the Jupiter asteroid belt. 2 alien sensors, the rocky field looked completely empty. But human eyes could see the hidden weapons platforms, the camouflaged fighters, and the carefully placed mines that had been positioned over decades of patient preparation. Their formation is exactly what we expected, reported his tactical officer, Im Sulji, studying the alien fleet through hidden cameras. Beginning Counter-Strike Pattern 7. The battle that followed was less like a fight and more like a surgical operation. Every Vexery ship moved according to patterns that humans had observed and recorded for 50 years. When the aliens tried to establish defensive positions, they found human forces already waiting in exactly those locations. When they attempted to retreat, they discovered that their escape routes had been blocked by weapons they had never detected. Do they know our movements before we make them? Demanded Vexery Fleet Commander Kexalon, as his flagship shuddered under human weapons fire. His tactical officer could only stare at the displays in confusion.
Yes, sir.
They seem to understand our doctrine better than we do. This was exactly what had happened. Humans had spent 50 years watching Vexery military operations, learning every standard procedure, every emergency protocol, every tactical preference. They had studied alien psychology so thoroughly that they could predict Vexery responses with frightening accuracy. The space battle ended when human boarding parties captured 3 Vexery command ships without firing a shot. The aliens discovered that their security systems had been compromised years earlier by human maintenance workers who had installed hidden access codes in every major system. On Earth, ground war revealed the true scope of human preparation. Resistance leader Yoon Jae-yoon moved his forces through streets they knew better than their occupiers ever could. 50 years of living under alien rule had taught them every patrol route, every security checkpoint, every blind spot in the surveillance network. "The communication center is ours," reported his field commander Baejiwan, speaking into a radio that used frequencies the Vexery could not monitor. Their entire computer network had backdoor access codes installed years ago. "We have complete control." But the most devastating attacks came from inside Vexery installations themselves. Humans who had worked as technicians, clerks, maintenance staff for decades suddenly revealed that they had been mapping vulnerabilities and installing hidden systems all along. Kong Woojin, still at his post in the Vexery Central Command, calmly entered a series of commands that shut down the aliens' planetary defense grid. To his Vexery supervisors, he was the same loyal worker they had trusted for 15 years. They never suspected that every system they had taught him to maintain was now under his control. "Security protocols disabled," he announced over the Resistance network. "All planetary shields are down." The Vexery garrison commanders found themselves in an impossible situation. Own technology was being used against them by the very people they had trained to operate it. Weapon systems refused to fire. Communication networks transmitted human propaganda instead of military orders. Transportation systems carried resistance fighters instead of alien reinforcements, but the greatest shock came from beyond Earth's solar system. Across 17 different worlds, human populations that the Vexery had believed were peacefully integrated suddenly revealed they had been in contact with Earth all along. Colonies that had seemed loyal for decades displayed perfect coordination with the rebellion on the mining world of Vega Prime. Human workers who had spent 30 years extracting resources for the Empire suddenly seized control of the entire operation. They had been preparing for this moment since the day of their arrival, slowly mapping every facility and identifying every weakness. "The ore shipments have stopped," reported Supervisor Zexavel to his superiors. "The humans have taken control of all mining equipment. First, they seem to know our security procedures better than our own guards do." Similar reports came from across the Empire. Food production worlds, manufacturing centers, research facilities, everywhere the Vexery had used human labor. They now found themselves facing enemies who understood their systems perfectly. General Rexstar, Supreme Commander of Vexery Forces, stood in his flagship's command center, staring at a tactical display that showed failure after failure. Every red marker represented another human victory, another installation compromised, another carefully planned operation succeeding. "This is impossible," he said to his staff, his voice shaking with disbelief. "We have superior technology. We have larger fleets. We have ruled the galaxy for centuries." His intelligence chief, a younger Vexery, who had grown up during the human occupation, provided the answer that chilled every alien in the room. "Sir, I believe the problem is that we never truly understood what we were fighting. We thought we were suppressing a defeated enemy. Instead, we were being observed and analyzed by the most patient strategists in galactic history. The price of 50 years of underestimation was becoming clear. The Vexery had not been ruling humanity. They had been teaching them everything they needed to know to win." 1 year after the uprising began, Dr. Kim Gina stood once again in the museum that had been her secret home for so long. But now the building served its true purpose again, preserving the history and culture of humanity for future generations. The hidden chambers below had been opened. Their contents now filled the restored galleries above. The Vexery Empire had not fallen through destruction, but through something far more powerful: understanding. When human forces finally reached the alien homeworld, they carried with them detailed records of every interaction between the two species over 50 years. every act of kindness or cruelty, every moment of cooperation or conflict, every individual alien who had shown mercy or hatred, it had all been carefully documented. "The tribunal will see Supervisor Kexalon now," announced interpreter Han Gisu, guiding a nervous Vexery administrator into the judgment chamber. The alien expected to face an angry court seeking revenge for 50 years of oppression. Instead, he found something that had never existed before in galactic history. A trial based on truth rather than victory. The judges were both human and Vexery. The evidence came from 50 years of careful observation. Most importantly, the punishment was designed not to destroy, but to teach. Commander Li Donghe of the Colonial Fleet addressed the assembled representatives from both species with words that would change how the galaxy thought about war and peace. "We remember everything. Every system you taught us, every weakness you showed us, every moment when your people chose cruelty or kindness. We offer you the same choice you once gave us: surrender and learn, or fight and be destroyed." But the real revolution came from the younger generation of Vexery. Those who had grown up working alongside humans began to see possibilities there. Elders could not imagine. Research assistant Velinara had collaborated with human engineers for years, never realizing she was helping to develop the technology that would eventually free her subjects. "They could have killed us all," she told the Provisional Council that now governed both species. "Their weapons were aimed at our cities, their fleets surrounded our worlds. But instead of revenge, they offered us something we had never given them a chance to change." The transformation was not immediate or easy. Some Vexery factions fought desperately to maintain the old system. They could not accept that a species they had considered inferior had outsmarted them so completely. But these holdouts found themselves increasingly isolated as more aliens saw the benefits of cooperation over conquest. The final ceremony took place exactly 2 years after Earth's liberation. President Moon Jae-hoo, elected as humanity's first post-occupation leader, stood before delegates from across the galaxy and made a declaration that would echo through history. "We fought not to become conquerors ourselves, but to ensure that conquest would never again be the basis of civilization. We remembered not just our pain, but also our hope that even our enemies could learn to be better."
Ow.
The restored museum became a symbol of this new relationship. Its halls now displayed artifacts from both human and Vexery cultures, showing how two very different species could learn from each other. Children of both races walked through exhibits that told the complete story: the conquest, the resistance, the liberation, and most importantly, the reconciliation. In one special room, visitors could see the original hidden chambers where humans had preserved their heritage during the dark years. The makeshift computers, the hand-copied books, the secret communication equipment, all of it remained as a reminder of what determination and patience could accomplish. The memorial wall drew the most visitors. 10,000 names were carved into black stone, humans and Vexery, who had died during the occupation. But they were not separated into victims and oppressors. Instead, they were honored equally as casualties of a way of thinking that both species had now moved beyond. Admiral Jungyuki, now serving as Director of Interspecies Defense, often brought foreign delegations to see this wall, the Empire believed. "That power created order," she would explain. "We learned that memory creates justice, and justice creates peace." The most remarkable change was in how both species approached technology and knowledge. Human creativity combined with Vexery scientific methods produced advances that neither civilization could have achieved alone. The ships that now carried peaceful trade between worlds used engines designed by mixed crews who had learned to think beyond the limitations of their separate cultures. Dr. Kim Gina kept one small reminder of the old days in her new office as Director of Cultural Preservation. A simple maintenance scanner she had carried during her years of hidden service sat on her desk as a paperweight. When young visitors asked about it, she would smile and tell them, "This tool taught me that the most important knowledge comes from watching, listening, and remembering. We learned to see not just what was, but what could be." The final irony was not lost on those who had lived through both the occupation and the liberation. The Vexery had tried to absorb humanity into their empire, believing their advanced technology and ancient culture would naturally dominate. Instead, they found themselves transformed by a species that had used 50 years of apparent servitude to become something neither. Civilization could have imagined true partners in building a better future. Memory had indeed brought victory, but not the kind anyone had expected. The greatest triumph was not defeating an enemy, but turning that enemy into a friend.